You're looking to understand what's important and, well, you want to get there efficiently. We get it.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a topic that's it's moving at breakneck speed.
Yeah, it really is. Artificial intelligence and robotics.
Exactly. Stuff that could genuinely reshape, well, pretty much everything.
We've been looking at this really interesting discussion from Tsunami World over on YouTube.
Right.
The video title translates roughly to Slave of or Liberation by the Computer.
Catchy.
It is, and it features people who are, right in the thick of these tech shifts. So a really valuable perspective.
Definitely. So our mission here for you is to pull out the really core insights from that conversation.
What's the key stuff about the future AI and robots might be building?
Yeah. We're really focusing on the speed,
Yeah.
The sheer velocity of it all and what that means.
The implications are huge. Economic booms, maybe, but also major disruptions, societal shifts.
Let's start with that speed then. One of the really striking things they mentioned.
Oh, yeah, the prediction from that former Google exec.
That's the one. Within 5 years, AI intelligence could equal the sum of all people.
Honestly, it's hard to even wrap your head around what that actually means.
It is. The speaker in the video basically says the same thing, just difficult to truly imagine.
And then they talk about maybe an even faster track for super artificial intelligence.
Right, possibly within 3 years, maybe even quicker.
It really does feel like the future's just rushing towards us, doesn't it?
It does, and they mentioned this online thread someone shared.
Outlining the phases.
Exactly, like we're in the early bit now, development, early adoption.
Then comes the cost drops, industry disruption. That's when things really start changing.
Followed by full automation, maybe a big economic boom.
And then this final phase, post-scarcity, a whole new paradigm. It sounds, well, dramatic.
It does. And that economic boom idea, it ties straight into the labor market, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They talk about how robotization could slash labor costs.
Making things that are super expensive now, like, say, construction.
Much, much more affordable. Imagine that.
The potential is huge. They even suggested that, everything can get really cheap.
Yeah, even like the example of pastries from a bakery. Automation driving costs down everywhere.
It's quite a picture. They use this analogy, too, an AI tsunami.
Right. You either learn to surf it or you drown.
It really hits home the scale of this thing.
And to show how fast things are moving right now, the anecdote about building a website.
Oh, yeah, that was incredible. A functional site, perfect text, in 10 minutes.
Using AI tools available today, compared to, 6 months or a year ago, it would have taken ages. Months, probably.
That difference is just stark.
Yeah.
It shows the acceleration we're already seeing.
For sure. And they got specific about jobs, too. Programming, for instance.
Yeah, a potential 80% drop in the need for programmers.
In just 2 or 3 years, they suggested. That's soon.
And it's not just coding, is it? It's lots of work done behind the computer, typing, text stuff.
Things that AI is getting very good at, very quickly.
It makes you think about past tech shifts, like the internet.
Right, they made that comparison. The internet took maybe, 25 years for its major impact to really unfold?
But with AI, they're talking potentially similar or even bigger shifts in maybe 3 years.
It's kind of mind-boggling. And remember how many big established companies just vanished during the internet era?
Yeah, totally disrupted.
This could be that, but on fast forward, much faster.
It really feels like the only limit on the consequences right now is just our imagination. The potential scope is vast.
Which brings up this idea of reindustrialization, doesn't it? Using robots to bring manufacturing back.
Yeah, the example of using tariffs. Maybe companies bringing production back to, say, the Netherlands.
Sounds good on the surface, right? Local production.
The catch they pointed out is crucial.
The jobs might not come back with the factories because robots are doing the work.
Exactly. So you've got this tension. Governments wanting jobs back, maybe using tariffs.
But then this huge wave of automation potentially wiping out those very same jobs anyway.
It makes you wonder, is there even a coherent plan? A macro master plan, as they put it.
Probably not, realistically. How could there be? The factors are just too complex, too interconnected.
And with big tech shifts, there are always surprises, unintended consequences.
Like the internet example they gave, we thought it might save energy, right?
Yeah, less travel, less paper.
But it ended up being a massive energy hog itself, just because of the sheer volume of data centers and usage.
That's a good point. And they brought up that image from 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Ah, the bone becoming a weapon, the first tool.
Yeah, how technology just takes on a life of its own sometimes. Its path isn't always predictable, or even what we intend. And this idea that, human evolution is now tangled up with tech evolution.
Technology having its own sort of logic, its own
Mm,
dynamics, beyond our full control.
it's a pretty deep thought.
Yeah.
But they did offer a counter-argument, too.
Right, the historical angle. New tech often creates new kinds of jobs we can't foresee now. Exactly. So maybe it's not all displacement. Maybe new roles appear.
But there's always that nagging feeling, but
Yeah.
maybe this time it's different.
They acknowledge that possibility, the speed, the breadth of AI. It might be a different beast altogether.
And then there was that concept, the proliferation of technology.
Oh, yeah, where tech seems to just expand and complicate things almost for its own sake.
The university admin example was good. More tech, but things get more complex, take more time, not less.
It's a weird paradox, isn't it? Aiming for efficiency, but sometimes creating bureaucracy.
So back to the speed thing. The discussion really hammered home that the timeline is key.
Absolutely. Slow change, we adapt gradually.
But this AI revolution, they're predicting it's going to be incredibly fast.
Which could be massively disruptive socially, economically,
Yeah.
if people and systems just can't keep up.
They even mentioned the possibility of Trump-like situations, periods of real upheaval because the adaptation is just too slow.
Yeah, highlighting that potential for instability. Political, social, it's a serious concern.
But it's not necessarily a runaway train, right?
Yeah.
They did talk about potential breaks.
Counterforces, yeah. Like energy
Yeah.
and raw materials.
Especially those rare earth metals needed for all the hardware.
And the global competition for those resources. Link that to geopolitics, Ukraine, U.S.-China tensions.
It could create serious bottlenecks, couldn't it? Or even worse, more conflict.
Which leads to that idea of nations maybe needing to reintegrate their power, political, military, economic, just to secure those resources.
A bit like historical colonialism, but for tech minerals.
It's a possibility they raised,
Yeah.
a potential reshaping of global power.
Shifting gears a bit to the more personal level. That paradox of convenience was interesting.
Oh yeah, the laundry example. We want convenience, but we outsource even tiny inconveniences.
It does make you think about, well, human nature. Are we maybe getting too reliant on making things easy?
And where does that end? Does it lead to that kind of
Mhm.
sci-fi scenario?
Like the Matrix or something, where humans are just passive, disconnected.
Losing agency, maybe even losing the desire for agency, because robots handle everything, even the slightly annoying stuff.
It's a bit unsettling to think about.
And this all scales up to bigger societal questions, too.
Like the planet's resources.
Mm-hmm.
All these robots, all the electrification needed, the demand for copper, lithium.
It's a massive environmental consideration. Can the planet actually sustain it?
Plus, the economic competition aspect. They framed it as almost warfare by other means.
Market dominance, yeah. China's approach, Trump's approach.
And the suggestion that if the fight shifts from labor costs to owning the resources, the actual stuff.
Then maybe real physical conflict becomes more likely. It's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah. They did say, maybe we're being too pessimistic.
But you have to be prepared, right? For significant upheaval. It seems plausible.
That analogy again, the Industrial Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
but crammed into maybe 4 or 5 years.
And happening in a world that's already, let's face it, pretty polarized and struggling with big problems.
The potential for society to just kind of explode, or at least have a really rough transition.
It seems high. Finding a new equilibrium could be very difficult.
And we can't forget the economic context.
Yeah.
Low inflation in the West for years, partly thanks to cheap stuff from China.
Right. And that whole model is shifting now anyway. So add AI disruption on top of that.
It's a potent mix. They mentioned techno-feudalism, too.
Yeah, this idea that robot companies, AI platforms become incredibly powerful.
Maybe so powerful that the state has to step in somehow to rebalance things.
It fundamentally challenges our whole economic system, doesn't it?
Right.
Wealth based on labor. What happens when labor isn't the main driver?
And what about individual purpose? Zing-giving, as they called it. So much of our meaning is tied to work.
If that goes away or changes drastically, what fills the gap?
Plus the potential for the gap between the haves and have-nots to just widen enormously.
Owners of the robots and AI versus everyone else.
And you have to ask, are governments even ready for this?
They're struggling with today's problems. How can they handle changes this fast, this complex? It's a huge worry.
There's also the social side of work they touched on.
Yeah, the cooperation, dealing with people, adapting. It teaches you stuff.
If that disappears for many, do we become more fragmented, more prone to tension.
It's a real risk. But then there's the flip side.
The liberation idea.
Right. AI handles the drudgery, the difficult tasks. Maybe it frees us up.
Frees us up for what exactly?
Yeah.
Forces that question. What does it mean to be human then?
A fundamental question. Though we also have to remember AI could be used for control, too.
Like monitoring travel for climate reasons, they suggested.
So it's not purely liberation. There's potential for restriction there as well.
Which brings us right back to that title, doesn't it?
Slave of, or liberation by, the computer. It really does capture the core tension. We don't know the answer yet.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the main takeaway really is the sheer speed.
Yeah, the incredible pace and the potentially massive transformative impact of AI and robotics.
It's going to touch everything, the economy, society.
Even our basic understanding of work, and maybe what it means to be human.
Our look into this source material really paints a complex picture. Huge opportunities, yes, but also some really significant challenges ahead.
Things we all need to be thinking about seriously.
So as you reflect on all this, we'll leave you with a final thought to chew on.
In a world that's getting more and more automated, maybe incredibly quickly, what does it truly mean to be human?
And how can we, collectively and individually, best navigate this period of really profound, really fast change?
It's probably one of the biggest questions you could ask yourself right now, thinking about the future.